Okay, there.
Got it.
We did get quite a bit of positive feedback about the recording and producing the YouTube for it. It's also very useful in a public relations aspect to, send people there. And what I did last year was I did a summary, a little overview précis of the topics covered in each talk, so that people could kind of move ahead if they needed to get to a particular thing. And yeah, so the plan is for about 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of questions.
I know for sure that my presentation doesn't take that long because I've practiced and I've timed it.
Wonderful.
So it'll be about half an hour, and then we can do as much time as people would like with questions. But yeah, and listening to a single person drone on for more than that. I don't know how you feel about that, Christine. Did you check?
I agree. I didn't time myself, but I have a feeling it won't be a full 45 minutes. So
yeah. But hopefully it'll be interesting and it will spawn lots of conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I know mine's interesting. I'm sure Christine's will be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
No, that's always the hope. But there again, I have had a number of inquiries that I won't be there. And sometimes people feel they have to apologize for not attending, which, always is a little surprising to me, because it's just a drop in, we just, you can just drop in and invite your friends, send them the link. That's fine. We don't publish the link on social media because we find we get bomb-ins.
Well, yes, that's a good thing. If you have no other security on the like being emitted or whatever, then it's probably best not to publish it.
So the link is on the Juror page. It's kind of buried,
Oh, good.
And then the link
people could find it if they want it. Yeah,
they can indeed. Yeah. So yeah. So it's an interesting way to produce a show. And it's almost twice the work. It's almost 2 shows actually, to have the selected works with the awards. And I imagine next year we'll probably go to in-person. We've not returned in MSA. We haven't returned to real live physical meetings yet. And because one time we planned it and then boom, the universe laughed at us. So.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it's harder to record when it's actually a live presentation.
Our chapter, I do the technical stuff for our local chapter, Central Okanagan, for the FCA. And yeah, we've had a hard time getting people to come out, but we have been doing hybrid meetings. So I have the equipment at the meeting. Yeah. People in the room can interact with the people on Zoom, and then we have like the live demo. So the people on Zoom can see it and hear it, and but it's awfully nice actually being there. But it's a lot of work doing the hybrid stuff. It really is.
Zoom has been wonderful, actually. We have had a lot of opinions of our committees that they prefer to stay, because we're provincial. We've now found that we're able to offer participation to those, as long as they can get the broadband width. To many more people to participate. So it's really been not a totally, I guess, a totally negative
not a totally bad thing.
Not at all.
Well, if you are interested down the road in finding out how to do a hybrid situation, you're certainly willing, by all means, email me and I can give you some information about it. Because it's nice to keep the people who are either maybe they don't like to drive in the dark, or it's bad weather, or they live out of town, a little too far away to come. It's nice to be able to keep them in the group.
Yes, I have had experience with experiencing hybrid. At one point, a few years ago, I organized a conference that was hybrid. We had 35 people around the table, and our presenter was by Zoom because he And that was interesting, but we did it in a hotel where they had some really top-notch professional equipment.
Yeah.
otherwise, if you're doing it from your home office, or you have to sort of watch what, make sure you have your microphones for the audience, and the
Mhm.
cameras have to pan properly so that everyone is included. You have to get those.
Yes, yeah.
So there isn't, well, we're getting more people signing in.
Well, it's that bell curve, right? Few people come early and then a whole bunch of people come on and then the stragglers come after. So.
Well, for those most people are leaving themselves on mute, and I'd say thank you for that, because sometimes it's difficult. We get echoes, and also the bandwidth is less. We're never sure how many people are going to be signing in. So if people are on mute, or a lot of people are not on visuals, so they're listeners, I guess. Yeah, we're getting towards we still have a few minutes. I'm not sure if we want to wait a little bit, maybe 2 to 3 minutes after 7 p.m. Just if people are still signing on, just to give them the opportunity to be fully there. Very nice. So welcome to everyone who is signing on. If you are experiencing any difficulties, if you're able to put your question into the chat box, I will try to, if you have any problems with connectivity, try to help. I don't see any chats right now that are. The other thing is, this is for Kit and for Christine. Did you want participants to put their questions into the chat box? Like if
I can't really watch chat and present at the same time.
Okay.
So if you're watching chat and you interject, or people just want to ask the question out loud, I would prefer that, because if they put it in chat, I just might not see it.
Well, I will watch chat, but I won't interrupt your talk. We'll leave it to the end, and if because sometimes things occur to people and they forget it by the end of the talk. But if they're able to put it into chat and we're able to catch it, then it might be something useful there as well. There's lots of people signing on now, so I guess it's working.
Hi, Mavis.
Is Mavis on? Oh, there you are.
Yes, yeah.
Hi, Kit. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Good.
I'm looking forward to tonight.
May I ask, just nod your head, if did everybody get the notice that we are recording? Okay, so it's good. Then I don't have to go through those waivers, verbal waivers. Okay, we seem to have 21 people now, and there's been a slowing down of the joining, the frenzy of joining. So maybe we'll just start, so that in the interest of getting through the evening, I just would like to at this point say to everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the 91st edition of the Juror Lecture of the Juried Open Juried Competition and Exhibition. My name is Bonnie Taylor, and as Vice President of the Manitoba Society of Artists and Chair of the show, I welcome you all to the Juror Lecture. We're online tonight. We're hosting from Winnipeg, located on the original lands and the waters of the Anishinaabe, Iniiwak, Anish and Iniwak, Dakota and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. The Manitoba Society of Artists hosts the OJCE, the Open Juried Competition and Exhibition, each year since 1926. Well, most of those years it's like 120 years for MSA, and it's the 91st iteration of this show. So the show is a highlight of the art season for MSA because it offers an opportunity to all Manitoba artists to exhibit their best work in the company of their peers. One of the objectives of MSA is to celebrate outstanding Manitoba art. All Manitoba artists are eligible to enter the competition. And this year we provided jurying for 76 artists submitting 170 works. All of these works are exhibiting online May 25th to August 31st. The jurors have selected 70 works and 12 awards to exhibit at Eagle Ridge Gallery in Winnipeg during the month of June, and that is ongoing. And I urge you very much to consult the website, msaojce.com, and find out the address and the hours of opening for the gallery. Now, the MSA leans heavily on our members for organization support. I'd like to extend thanks to all the MSA members and supporters who have donated their time to ensure the show represents such a fine showcase of Manitoba art. We've all benefited greatly from the expertise of our online registration chair, Leif Norman, and MSA social media team, Mavis Brake and Joe Smalley, with Cindy Rothery handling publicity and public communications. The credit for the gallery exhibit goes to Paul Taves, who handled intake, hanging, tags, and the brochure. And he also welcomes visitors to the gallery. Paul serves as in his role as gallerist. He welcomes visitors to the gallery. There's a myriad of details that go into the creation of an online event as well as a physical event. And for their dedication and expertise, we extend appreciation for the time, commitment of time and talents to making this show a success. The 91st OJCE has also received generous financial support from the Hilton Lee Foundation for Kindness, Corey Knight in memory of her mother, MSA member Jean Weentz, Morley and Rita Cohen Foundation, Pacific Nuclear Charitable Foundation, Cheryl Cohen, and Robert McCullough, as well as Sandra Wiseman in memory of her sister, Bev Morton. Additional support in kind has been generously provided by Manitoba businesses and galleries, and so we also gratefully acknowledge our faithful donors who've contributed in kind. The Manitoba Centennial Concert Hall with tickets to the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, the opera, and the ballet. And the award winners will be receiving these at next week's presentation of their recognition. Artists Emporium supplied gift cards, and Pulse Studio Gallery also gift cards. So we thank all of our sponsors, those who are supporting us financially and in kind. In addition to that, several awards have been provided by families in memory of longtime MSA members, and we gratefully recognize support from families of the William J. Bertels, W. Cliff Packer, Brian J. Hislop, Lynn Sissons, Barbara Cook Enders, Jean Weentz, and Sandra Morton Wiseman. MSA would like to particularly thank the jurors, our jurors, Kit Bell and Christine May, for diligence and care in examining and consulting on the works submitted. Their juror lecture this evening is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the MSAOJCE.com website. Probably not for a few weeks until we compile it all. This is the 4th year that the Juried show has presented an online competition. The long list of entries exhibits online and is available for viewing on the website, MSAOJCE.com. Additional information on awards and jurors and general juror comments is posted on the pull-down tabs of the website. And that's where the YouTube links will also be posted when they're available. So keep checking back with the website to hook up with those links and see the YouTubes. Our thanks to our jurors who have agreed to the recording of this event. Webmaster Leif Norman will provide the YouTube and post it onto the website. I'm not sure if we will individually notify you, but do keep checking back, and it does take several weeks. So we will now proceed to the juror talks, and I ask each of you to mute your microphones during the presentation. Each presentation is about 45 minutes or less, and will be followed by an opportunity for questions and answers. I think Christine, you were wanting to present first. Now, I can give you the same introduction that is already on the website, but I'd just like to notify our listeners and our attendees that Christine is a Kelowna-based curator and she has much experience overseeing exhibitions and curatorial projects at the Kelowna Art Gallery. For her interests and her current activities, I will turn you over to Christine, who will supply you with her presentation and an introduction. Please help me welcome Christine May.
Well, thanks so much, Bonnie, and thanks everybody. I see lots of familiar names that I learned and got very familiar with throughout the jurying process. So nice to see all of you. As Bonnie mentioned, I'm based in Kelowna, which is the unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. And I've been here for about 2 years as the curator at the art gallery here, which is a mid-sized public art gallery that houses a collection of about 1,000 works of art, and I oversee the exhibitions and collection here. My presentation today, maybe I'll share my screen, is called Curation as a Creative Practice. So really it's just talking about the role of the curator and the work that we do with contemporary artists and how we come up with our exhibition ideas. So walking through those steps, and I welcome any questions throughout the presentation. Happy to chat. So I will share my screen. All right, there we go. Okay, so I think everybody can see that. So again, I'm kind of coming at this from a different perspective than Kit, kind of curator versus visual artist. So I'm not a visual artist. I went to school for art history. And as an art historian, I'm thinking about art in a different way. I'm approaching it kind of from an outsider perspective and really see myself as an intermediary between the visual artist and the public audience. So what I consider my role as here at the gallery, at least, is to oversee the selection and the interpretation of artwork. And also considering curation as an artistic practice in its own right. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here. So first, the role of the curator. I think I'll generally say that the role in public art galleries, at least, is to lead projects around the production of exhibitions, publications, and public programs. So there are those three very important pieces. Publications really go hand in hand with exhibition and surprisingly end up being an equal amount of work. And then our public programs, we usually have an education or a team of public programmers that would be responsible for school tours and adult art classes and those kinds of things. But the curatorial department really kind of forms and shapes all of those programs that take place. Another thing that the curator does, or at least what we hope to do, is shape and influence what's happening in the contemporary art world. So that really involves visiting other galleries, doing a lot of reading and research to have an understanding of what's happening now and how we can bring that to our local or more regional audience. And also a responsibility to contribute to academic research and writing. A knowledge of what my boss would call administrivia, so grant writing, budget management, understanding audience engagement, and a big one is exhibition design and planning. So it's a fun job in that you get to have an understanding of all of these little pieces and how an exhibition comes to be. So this is an image that was taken recently of myself and our lead preparator, Matt Glenn, in installing an exhibition that we have up at the gallery right now. So there's a lot of work that happens in the preparation side of things in the months and years ahead of the exhibition taking place, but also during the installation process, what might be about 1 to 2 weeks, where you're deciding layout and kind of organization of the works in the space. So in addition to, distilling information about the artwork and the artists on display, a curator is responsible for developing a thematic approach to exhibitions or sharing research with the wider audience in a way that's accessible and provocative. So provocative in the sense that you want people to think critically about the work that you're seeing on display, but also you want people who are walking off the street, maybe tourists in the city who aren't familiar with the work, to be able to access it and understand what they're seeing. so that's not only about the thematic approach or the layout of the artwork, but also that would be presented in didactic text and panels on the wall. A curator's job is also to prioritize building relationships with artists in the local creative community. And that really leads into the primary role, or what I see as the primary role, which is supporting artistic careers, especially for emerging artists. And that would be through providing paid exhibition opportunities, commissioning artworks, and writing about their work. So those are kind of the key pieces. So the curatorial process, I find it interesting anyway, so hopefully all of you do as well, but I'll walk through it using a case study of a recent exhibition here that I oversaw at the Kelowna Art Gallery in 2021, which was called A Story in Three Parts, Eshevek, Pudaguk, and Asuma. And this kind of gives you a sense of how an exhibition comes together with all of those pieces that I just mentioned. So for this exhibition, we heard from a curator in Toronto named William Huffman, who works for the West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative. And he had an exhibition that was touring around Canada, featuring work by Kanoyuak Eshevek, who is a very renowned Canadian artist who passed away, I think, in 2018, known best for her prints. She is an Inuit woman and was kind of paved the way for many of the printmakers in Cape Dorset at the time. So he had this amazing body of work, both drawings and prints. We knew we wanted to present them at the gallery, but we have a large 3,000 square foot space. So we decided to kind of embark on this co-curated project called A Story in Three Parts, with the hope of bringing together other artists, another historical artist named Sharni Pudaguk, who is also an Inuit woman who worked in drawing and is relatively unknown. So we thought she would be a nice pairing with a more senior Canadian artist. And then a contemporary collective called Asuma, and they are an Inuit artist collective that works in film and film production. So this was our attempt and our hope at bringing together three distinct but connected narratives that explore the past and present of Inuit creative art. So our first step really is selecting works. So we made a selection of works in coordination with William Huffman in Toronto, and based on their archives and their collection at the West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative. They have a vast collection of artwork and were willing to loan many of those works to us. So we narrowed down kind of a long list to a short list of works that would fit on our wall, and we used this very handy layout program called SketchUp. And once we had our works selected, we laid them out on the wall, figured out where our walls would go, enlisted the help of our preparator, Matt, to figure out how we would build a screening room for the film that we hoped to present. And this is kind of how it ended up. So this is like step one of the more practical exhibition process in visualizing how the work is going to look on the wall. And then installation comes, and we had 2 weeks to paint and build walls and develop vinyl with our graphic designer on staff, and really figure out how we were going to make this exhibition come to life and create a narrative for our visitors to walk around and kind of get an understanding of Inuit creative art. So this is Matt and myself and our registrar, Clea, laying out the vinyl on the wall and trying to figure out how this is going to all play out. And then we had all of our artwork delivered. So the artwork comes in crates, all the way from Toronto in this case, and we have a staff. Every gallery would have a staff of preparators, usually on contract, that would be very skilled in art handling. And in this case, we're opening the crates and we'll lay them all out on blankets and then put them up on the wall. And here is part of that process where we're laying the actual artworks out on the floor on carpet tiles or on foam blocks, and then we can get a sense of the actual visuals of what it's going to look like before we decide exactly how they're going to be laid out. And another key step in this installation progress is, of course, condition reporting. So we want to pay really close attention to these works, especially many of them are in historical collections. So we look at the prints or the drawings themselves for any flaws or anything to note. And we also note any damage that would be on the frame or the mat, discoloration and things like that. So there's this understanding of conservation that all of the curatorial staff would need to have in order to assess any works that come through our doors. We would also test light levels at this point and make sure that everything, especially works on paper, are in a safe environment to stay for the next 3 to 4 months. And then we have our final, unveiling of the exhibition. Everything is up on the wall. At this point, we've added our labels, our didactic panels, so people would come into this introduction room, read about the different artists on display, and they can kind of start their journey through the exhibition. We include the publication here. So you'll see a bench where we have the book. People can read a bit more, spend time in our screening room to watch the film. And there's a lot of opportunity for people to just walk through and look at the visuals, but also from a curatorial perspective, you want to include a lot of text if you can in the form of vinyl on the wall or in a separate publication so people can investigate kind of as deeply and richly as they would like. So just showing each artist individually, and then there's different walls where we're kind of merging the works together so you can see how they relate thematically. And then in this section, we created another screening area, which was under the umbrella of Isuma, this artist collective. It's called Uvagut TV, and it's a 24-hour stream of Inuit content that they are creating themselves, and it's available worldwide. So that was also an interesting component of this exhibition that we added kind of at the end. And here I included this slide to show how we're thinking about educational tours or other programming that happens at the gallery. We're showing the initial drawing compared to the final print. So it allows our school groups to stop in front of this wall and talk about the process of printmaking, which is quite complicated and often confusing, wood blocks versus lino cuts, and et cetera. So different educational opportunities, which we're considering in the process of curating an exhibition. And then we always create interpretive guides or small brochure-like publications. And this is another way for people to pick up a copy, take it home for free, read more about the artwork, have a deeper understanding of what they just saw, and then hopefully return to the exhibition. So we do create a lot of free takeaways for our visitors. So that's kind of the steps of the exhibition process. And then I wanted to talk more about curating in general and working with contemporary artists like yourselves. And I'm sure many of you have hosted curators or other artists for studio visits, which is what I'll talk about next. So most galleries have a pretty small curatorial team. Some just have one curator on staff. We have 3 of us here at the gallery that contribute to making these curatorial decisions. And the steps that are involved in that, if we're trying to brainstorm or come up with an exhibition, it starts with research, of course. What artists would we want to work with? Are we looking at a certain theme, or do we want to just spotlight an artistic career? But often, especially in Kelowna, in a more regional center, we want to highlight the work of our local talent. So here on this slide are 2 recent studio visits that I did. One with Mary Smith McCullough, who is a Kelowna-based artist who works in printmaking. She has a show coming up at the gallery in the next couple months. And then on the right here is an artist named Wanda Locke, who is a very talented Kelowna-based artist as well, but who works on a national scale and produces quite large-scale paintings. So these studio visits are usually booked when we're brainstorming how we might fit them into one of our programs. And it's a very, very important piece of the puzzle. It's also a mechanism to start a conversation and an important indicator of if you want to work with that artist. So you get to know them as a person in their studio visit. So it's not just about their work or the visuals, it's really about how would we collaborate. Also, I think our philosophy in studio visits is for an artist to really be in control and leading the conversation, not to put them on the spot, but to give them an opportunity to share without us telling them how we see their work, but to hear it from them first. So we love studio visits. It's one of the more fun parts of the job. And then once we select an artist for a contemporary artist anyway, for an exhibition, we use an artist-led approach. This is very important because they really need to be involved from the kind of initial stages. I use Patrick Lundeen as an example. He is based out of Kelowna as well, originally from Alberta. A fantastic sculpture artist and also a painter. And he had an exhibition here last year, which was really popular with people of all ages. But really, he was involved in the initial kind of research phase. We did several studio visits before we decided on how the final exhibition would look. I consulted on him on all the decisions, whether we wanted to do a formal publication. In this case, he decided to make a vinyl record and an artist zine. So it makes the exhibition really more enjoyable because the artist is we're really supporting their vision, their values, their creativity in a more administrative capacity as opposed to shaping their vision, independently. So an artist-led approach is really our method, and usually results in a more successful exhibition. And then there's selecting a work. So we have the research, we've done the artist or the studio visit, we've selected the artist, we know who we want to work with, and then we want to select a body of work to show. Usually what I do before we do kind of a second studio visit is come up with a long list of works that we might be interested in showing at the gallery. Then this is narrowed down, and I like to consult with the artist on the narrowing down of that list, but really it comes down to a few more practical reasons. We would narrow down the list due to a thematic fit, so how we feel like the work is going to interact with the other work in the space. And then there's also, unfortunately, a lot of logistical reasons we would eliminate works from that list, or in the case of a group show, if we're selecting several artists, we might have to eliminate an artist from that list. And that has to do with budgetary implications. Unfortunately, we kind of got a set budget and need to kind of stick to it. And also logistical requirements like space and shipping. So if we want to show artists out of the province, what does the shipping look like? Is it $4,000 to get it here? Do we have to build a crate to ship it? So there are lots of administrative kind of considerations that we have to make when we're putting together an exhibition. So usually it starts with the ideal idea. We're really excited about it, and then it kind of gets smaller and smaller into the more practical presentation. Once we've settled on a short list of works, we hope that it tells a story that makes sense to a visitor that is not familiar with the artist or the work. So again, we include the artist in this conversation, but we want to really tell a story from start to finish as soon as they walk into the exhibition. What are they reading on the wall, and how are these works kind of capturing the vision of the artist or the theme that we're trying to present in the show. So in essence, really selecting work for inclusion in an exhibition, it's not always about what is my favorite or what is, our favorite, but it comes down to fit in the overall theme, fit in the space, and then if it works with our budget and our timeline and all of those little details. And then lastly, something that we're really focused on here at the gallery, especially as it pertains to contemporary art and working with living artists, is socially engaged curatorial practice. There is a real interest, I think, across the boards in galleries across Canada, I should say, in selecting and maintaining artwork for public presentation that reflects contemporary social needs or interests. That has to do with our permanent collection. So we have a new and updated permanent collection policies that allow us to focus in on areas where our collection is weak. So historically, we've probably had 90% of white male artists in our collection. And we're obviously trying to change that, not just me, but over the past 10 years and hopefully more aggressively going forward in looking at artists that are underrepresented. Especially in Kelowna, which is a very diverse community. We don't want to represent just a small slice of the active artists that are working here. We want to really capture, activity that's happening now in our city. So there's some interesting activity that's happening there in our collection policies and practices, but also in exhibitions. So this is an exhibition that we're really proud of that we presented in 2022. So just recently, and what we like to do is kind of leave space in our exhibition schedule to allow us to react to timely social or political issues. And in this case, I met an artist based out of Kelowna named Naseem Pirhati, who is from Iran and is now doing her MFA at UBC Okanagan campus here. And she's responding to the protests that are happening in Iran and around the world that are in support of the rights of women and girls to be able to express themselves and wear what they want. So she's approaching her work from a very feminist perspective and also reflecting on her own family and culture and upbringing and home. And similarly, we found an artist named Rehan Yazdani, who works in Vancouver and is a professor at Emily Carr. And she's making different, but very, very kind of similar work. She's working in the medium of ceramics, whereas Naseem is a painter and working in film. But both of them, again, reflecting on their own lives as women from Iran, coming from a culture that they both celebrate and criticize, and again, responding to these really timely political issues. Because we presented this exhibition, we were able to book really amazing speakers who were experts on this topic, who were able to talk about contemporary art in Iran and especially women making art in protest, which was really powerful. And we also hosted several protests at the gallery in support of this cause. So again, curating socially engaged art is really important at this point, and to be able to respond to these issues quickly is something that we hope to be able to do. I think that's kind of it for my presentation. I just wanted to give an overview of the role of a curator, how it works in kind of a regional center like this, and how we work with the public and how we hope to engage with the public. Working with contemporary artists, obviously, and supporting their careers is kind of the primary focus of the gallery, and that, of course, relates to all of you and the work that you do. So happy to answer any questions you may have or continue the conversation.
Thank you. Are there, if I should say, if anyone wishes to comment, just unmute yourself. And I don't think we have people speak, we don't have a problem people speaking over each other, but I know that I have to say, thank you, Christine. I found that fascinating, the whole process and the logistics behind the mounting of an exhibit. Our exhibit is a little simpler than that, but in the continuing gallery process, that's really fascinating. How do you go about finding the artists that you, or encouraging artists to actually approach you? Do you have any kind of policies or things
that's a really good question, because since I've been here in the past 2 years, we've put out several calls for submission, and they haven't been super successful. It's hard to reach a wide audience, even just locally. And professional full-time artists are very busy, so they don't have time to respond to these kind of quick, 2-week to 1 month turnarounds for these calls. So it requires a really active approach in reaching out to artists. So luckily we have a university in Kelowna that has a great fine arts program, both both BFA and MFA, and wonderful profs there that we connect with. So we're able to kind of reach out to students and emerging artists, but we also have a lot of artists that have come from Vancouver and have retired in the Okanagan. So again, that's where studio visits come in. I do a lot of emailing and calling and reaching out to people to just get a sense of what they're working on. Anything in driving distance, I try and go see. We have an art gallery in Penticton and Vernon, which is kind of an hour in either direction. So keeping tabs on what's going on has been helpful. Yeah, but it's an ongoing kind of process, I would say.
I think I visited, well, every time my sister-in-law was a resident there, every time we would visit her, of course, I would pop in to your gallery.
Yeah,
It's always very fascinating. I know that too, that you must have ties to the museum galleries across Canada. Do you ever, are you ever able to benefit from those kinds of, I guess they would be almost like repertory theater, like traveling exhibits?
Absolutely. That's a great point. We take a few traveling exhibitions each year. We also send out our exhibitions into the world. So there's an exhibition of ours that was curated in-house called featuring work from Warhol, Andy Warhol and Banksy, and other pop artists. And that's opening up at the Art Gallery of Alberta next week. So there's a lot of exhibition exchange that's happening. And that's a great opportunity to have feature artists from other provinces, because we have a real regional or kind of BC focus, but it's great to have work from artists across the country. And that's a wonderful way of doing that. So yes, traveling exhibitions, we're always looking for new ones, and we take a few each year.
Are there any questions from the floor?
Actually, I've got one, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But I think it might be an interesting conversation. So, when we think of art galleries, there's the public art gallery like yourself and the one in Lake Country and Penticton and whatnot. And then, of course, there's other art galleries, which I guess are more commercial. So could you speak to the difference in the focus of those two? I think that might be interesting.
Yes, that's a great question. I also love visiting commercial galleries, and there are some galleries that are doing amazing work, and they send us their, they rotate commercial exhibitions more quickly. So say every couple weeks. And that's also another way of keeping tabs on really talented contemporary artists. So it's not such a separate world. The difference is we have we're really, government funded almost entirely. So our collection and the work that we do is the taxpayers. So when we collect something, we usually put it out on social media, and we want to show our community what we've collected, because we're just housing it for them, for all of us. So it's a different level of responsibility, I think. And we can't just kind of willy-nilly decide what we want to do based on our likes and interests. There's more of a checks and balances system with a board of directors. Being a nonprofit, they're kind of overseeing our activity. Whereas in a commercial gallery, if I was a curator there, I would more easily be able to go out, scout the artists I like, something that I might be more interested in. And, it's serving a different purpose, of course, which is making money. And we are a nonprofit, so we are not making any money. So.
Is the work at your gallery for sale at all, or is that something you don't really consider? You consider it more from a public interaction?
Yep, we don't sell anything here. In fact, it's a conflict of interest. So what we can do is sell artist books or artist materials. So for example, we had artist in the gallery this year that also made edible art in the form of chocolate bars, which sounds silly, but it's amazing. The wrappers are like so beautiful. I don't think any of us even opened the chocolate bar. So we can sell artist editions and that kind of thing. But in terms of exhibitions, it really is a conflict of interest if we are selling the work. But we are supporting the career in a way that we hope, obviously, an artist will be able to sell their work. Yeah. I should mention, though, another way of financially supporting an artist is through commissions. So we just commissioned a work by an Indigenous artist here in Kelowna named Sheldon Louie. We'll be you know, we offered him a amount that was agreed upon to create an 4 foot by 8 foot canvas painting. And that will then become part of our permanent collection. So there's ways of using our funding, our nonprofit funds to support artists directly in the purchasing of their work, but we wouldn't sell it, you know, for sale to the public here.
Mhm.
How do you balance your permanent collections with emerging artists and curatorial work? To me, the curatorial part is the really exciting part, but then there's also this permanent collection. How do you balance that out as far as time and that goes?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question too, because it's the part that's behind the scenes that you don't really realize how much work goes into maintaining a permanent collection. We do have a full-time registrar, and that role is basically the permanent collection manager. So they keep the database maintained. We have our permanent collection fully published online. That ends up being quite a bit of work to digitize it. And then we do have a vault here on site in our building. So luckily it's just steps away across the hallway. So we maintain humidity and temperature and making sure that everything is safe and organized. My role as the curator is more on the acquisitions side of things. So a lot of time and effort is spent looking for new work to acquire, and then getting that approved through not only our board of directors, but our acquisitions committee. So I would say that takes up quite a lot of time. That is divided between the other work, curatorial work that we're doing in relation to the exhibitions. So I wouldn't say it's split 50-50, but it's on a weekly basis. We're looking at acquisitions and our acquisitions policies and all of that kind of thing. So it ends up being a lot, but both sides of it are very interesting.
I have a question. Now you brought this up, the conservation of the artworks. How much of your budget, I guess, as a public art gallery would need to be assigned to the preservation and the conservation of the works in your collection?
Well, I don't know a number, but it depends on what is acquired. So if we're acquiring, say, 6 to 10 works each year, they're assessed as soon as we see the work for the first time, and then we can figure out how much conservation work is required. And there is the Canadian Conservation Institute that we usually contact if some serious conservation work needs to be done. We can reframe things. We can, you know, swap out acidic mats for conservation mats, and we can do kind of simple conservation on site. But otherwise, if something requires a lot of cleaning, we'll usually contact our colleagues at the CCI and determine what the cost will be and where we'll send it. So I think it's kind of on a case by case basis. But if we're set on acquiring a new work, we'll spend the necessary funds, I think, to clean it up and keep it protected.
What advice would you give to artists in the creation of their work to provide the easiest, I guess, the easiest avenue for conservation? Mistakes to avoid, for example, might be of some interest.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think this is tough because not everybody has a climate controlled space. Most artists that I know nearby have a studio like in their shed, or not even necessarily air conditioned, but fluctuations in temperature and humidity are a huge factor in damaging artwork, as well as light. So any works on paper, photography, painting, drawing, watercolors, whatever, if you're storing it in kind of you know, shelving that's inert, so not wood or something where pests can go into, or where there can be water damage. But if you're storing them in kind of metal shelving, that's probably best. Then you're protecting it from light, you're protecting it from direct moisture and pests. So making sure that you're storing your work in a very safe place. hard to avoid those temperature fluctuations, but even we just received a shipment of artwork recently, and we were thinking, oh, this is weird. The frame at the back has kind of popped off, and that's because it had been sitting on a truck in the heat. It came from a cool location and had been sitting on a humid truck sitting in the heat. So really little things like that can damage the work. So keeping it in a very stable environment is probably the best way to avoid conservation issues.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions that regarding the curation and preservation of artworks in a gallery or submissions? Okay, I would just like to say thank you so much, Christine, not only for your efforts in helping to put together this juried show and select the artworks for physical exhibit, but for your speaking, your juror lecture this evening. And we'll record it. We'll have it available to those who are not interested but not able to attend this evening. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we will see you next week, of course. Thank you. Yeah. And our next juror is Kit Bell, and she is from Vancouver, and she attended the UBC with a Bachelor of Science and kind of gravitated towards art. I will leave it at that, and I will let Kit take over from here to introduce us to her art and her juror talk this evening. Please help me welcome Kit Bell.
Thank you. So my juror talk is going to be from a completely different perspective, which is probably interesting. If we were all the same, wouldn't it be boring? So I am going to go ahead and share my screen and get going here. There we go. So I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be one of the jurors for your annual show. For those who don't know me, I'm a signature member of the Federation of Canadian Artists, a frequent juror, and an instructor. And today, my talk is on being an artist and how now is the best time to be one, in my opinion. First of all, congratulations to all the artists who entered the Open Juried Competition and Exhibition Show. Bringing your years of experience together to create your artworks and then to be brave enough to submit them. It is not easy putting your work out there for others to see, to put it in a competition before a jury. After all, artists are people driven by the tension between the desire to communicate and the desire to hide. Christine and I were very impressed by the quality of the entries that we juried. They include an amazing range of media and techniques. Deciding which artwork was to receive the awards was the hardest part for me. There were so many that were in the running, so to speak. And as an artist, I know how much it means to receive the recognition of an award. My background is that of an artist, and I know my story. But when I was jurying this show, looking at the wide variety of paintings, drawings, prints, and sculptures, and all the different materials used in all the different ways, it made me wonder about your stories. Perhaps you loved crayons and paint as a child, or building sandcastles or things out of plasticine. You may have been one of those doodling in the pages of your notebook at school. And you are probably more observant, soaking in experiences and wondering about things. When you got around to drawing or painting more seriously was probably dependent on the path your life took, with family and careers often taking a higher priority. But somewhere along the line, it became possible for you to carve out some time and some space for art in your life. You were an artist. You probably didn't call yourself that, but you were. Somewhere it became possible for you to take some workshops or classes, to start building the skills you needed, and to learn how to use an artist's tool. Then art started to take over. You developed preferences for your medium and learned different ways of using it. And you still may not have called yourself an artist. Whether more time became available for you to create, or you created more time, art became more of a priority in your life. You started creating art on a regular basis. By now, you were quietly thinking of yourself as an artist. And you probably found some like-minded people. And then you decided to put your artwork out there for the world to see. You entered an art show. You finally called yourself an artist. But of course, you'd always been an artist. I think we are living in one of the best times to be an artist. We have access to a wide variety of materials and techniques from which to create art and to experiment. We have the masterpieces of the past and the present at our digital fingertips. And we have the freedom to follow our muse and create that which moves us. This is very different and special compared to the experience of artists in the past. To gain an appreciation of the creative freedom that we have today, we need to look at the past. You can't eat a painting or wear a sculpture. So historically, artists had patrons who supported them. Patrons were the very wealthy, either aristocrats or clergy, initially. Artists had to please their patron, so what they painted or sculpted often wasn't up to them. Think of Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Learning how to become a skilled artist also wasn't easy. There was no YouTube back then. A person interested in becoming an artist had to gain a position as an apprentice in an established artist workshop to learn the skills so that one day they would be able to have their own workshop and their own patrons. As time progressed and civilization advanced, a well-to-do merchant class developed with enough disposable income to commission an artist to paint them or a loved one. That supported more artists, but they still had to paint what the customer wanted. But more artists with more customers didn't resolve the problem of creative freedom. The majority of the work was still done on commission. This is a painting of Rembrandt's The Night Watch. Few fun facts. This painting took 3 years, and it was finished in 1642. It's 12 feet by 14.5 feet, so pretty big painting, and the figures in it are almost life-size. In 1715, it was moved to the Amsterdam Town Hall. It had to be trimmed to fit. So you can see on this image the lines of how the painting that exists today is actually smaller than the painting that Rembrandt originally did. Another fun fact, each member of the Night Watch paid 100 guilders to Rembrandt to be included in the painting, which back then was a princely sum. Then in the mid-1700s came the rise of art dealers, merchants dealing in the resale of art, antiquities, and other luxury items. Now, the resale of older work may not have seemed very helpful to artists trying to earn a living at the time. But eventually, over about 100 years, art dealers began to support artists directly by buying work from them for their galleries. Also around this time, affluent families would support a daughter or a son with a calling, allowing them to travel and learn about art. This happened right around the time of Impressionism, and all the isms that followed. It was an explosion of individuality and creativity. If you look at this chart, you can see that initially things changed very slowly. Periods in art history lasted for hundreds of years. After the 1500s, styles of art started to change at a faster pace. The Baroque period, for example, only lasted 125 years. But as travel increased and families sent their offspring off on the grand tour of Europe, ideas and knowledge from the past impacted art in many ways. Meeting in cultural centers like Paris, artists started to paint what they saw and what interested them. There were so many factors and influences, such as the invention of photography, that impacted art at this time. It really is very interesting and worthwhile to study art history. And I'm quite interested that Christine has a degree in it. That's something I have to look into. Here is an example. Mondrian was an artist born in 1872 in the Netherlands. His early work was representational, consisting largely of traditional subjects. He is known for being one of the pioneers of 20th century abstract art, as he changed his artistic direction from figurative painting to an increasingly abstract style. Finally, he reached a point where his artistic vocabulary was reduced to simple geometric shapes. Here are 3 paintings of a tree done by Mondrian during 1910 and 1912, so just a short span of time, during a period when his style was evolving quickly. The first painting is still quite representational and organic. In the second, beginnings of a gradual shift towards geometric shapes can be seen. And in the third, the painting only hints at its origins as the abstract takes over. The 19th and 20th centuries saw just about everything that could be imagined in art. From Impressionist landscapes capturing the light and feel of a place, to Cubism and abstract geometric abstraction, artists have splattered and collaged their way through a whole new range of art. And the ease of travel, along with the internet, has brought it all to us. It has never been easier to learn about art and to create art than it is today. Artists can follow their muse and create a wide variety of artwork. Just look at the work that's been presented in this show. And art is even more easy than ever to own. There are art shows and galleries everywhere. And what you create as artists will often resonate with another person, to the point where they will purchase it and hang it in their homes to enjoy. I'm going to talk about my own journey for a few minutes. I've been painting on and off all my life. After graduating from the University of British Columbia, I spent 15 years in the computer industry, designing and building computer systems, which is also a form of creativity. After taking courses part-time for a few years, I took a year off and did a full-time year at the Ottawa School of Art. Looking back, I think the 2 most important courses that I took were art history and printmaking, mostly because of the influence on my current work. Now, you might think that after attending art school, I would be focused on art. But hey, life got in the way, and I spent the next 15 years in the horse industry with very little time to make art. After I sold my equestrian center, I worked part-time as a computer trainer and got back to painting. I had enough time and space to create art again. In 2011, I retired from the non-art world and finally had enough time to pursue painting full-time. This may be a familiar story to you. Many of us are making art our second or third career. Although I work primarily in acrylic, I feel that my previous experience with oil painting and my use of other media has greatly influenced my art. Trying out different media and technical techniques adds to the pool of information that feeds your creativity. I view art as a journey rather than as a destination, and each artwork is a step along that journey. My work has progressed through many phases and is continuing to develop and change. For many years, I was just happy if the painting resembled the subject. I developed a process using underpainting that worked very well for me. Being comfortable in recreating what I saw, I began to experiment with composition, color, mark making, and the use of transparent versus opaque paint. I started to work without the safety net of a good reference photo, using instead an impression remembered, perhaps reinforced with a few images or sketches of the area where I got my inspiration. For example, this glimpse of the sky showing through the trees. I found that this allowed me to get more to the feeling of a place rather than an accurate representation of it. It allowed me to disconnect from the photo reference and instead simply use it as a point of departure. And I found I was having fun. Taking an idea and running with it unleashed my creativity. Gradually, the process of painting and creating became more important to me than the subject of the painting. I wanted to enjoy the act of creating. I started to choose subject matter that would allow me to experiment with specific techniques. It became important to me to recreate the feeling invoked by being there at the actual place, rather than to accurately reproduce the subject. I began to see things not as they are, but as they could be. For example, while wandering around in the woods, I got an idea for a painting. In my mind, I was seeing swirls of autumn leaves with a strong sense of the vertical trunks, patterns, the vibrating colors. Although my idea didn't really resemble the area, I took a photo to remind myself. Every painting you do is built on all the ones that came before. Allow your imagination to take you where you need to go. For years, I felt very comfortable being a landscape painter. When I got tired of trees on canvas, I would change up the media. Like here with this gouache and ink resist of the little goats. Or I would paint birds for a while. But I always came back to landscapes. I like quiet, calm places, and that's what I painted. But comfortable isn't always good. For me, painting landscapes became less inspiring and more automatic. And then with the pandemic, I lost my way. I'm sure some of you felt the same. Uncertainty and isolation. I found it very hard to create. Searching for a way to restart my path, I remembered my interest in printmaking from art school, and I started a new journey. I had been teaching one of the Federation of Canadian Artists foundation classes, the elements of design, for a couple of years. I set aside painting on canvas. It gave me time to think about the principles and the elements of design, and to remember things from the past which lit a spark, but never had a chance to ignite. So this little work here, for example, this is watercolor on Yupo. And anybody who's tried that knows that watercolor can be very unruly on Yupo. So what I did was, using my computer and my Cricut cutter, I created this very intricate stencil. And I use a Cricut cutter because my arthritic hands just would not be able to do this by hand anymore. But as I created it, I figure, what the heck, use a knife. So what I did was I put the stencil over top of the watercolor once it had dried, and I scraped a thin layer of gloss gel medium over top of it. And when that dried, what it did was it protected the watercolor. And I washed off whatever was not protected. Anything that hadn't been under the stencil was removed, and it left this image on the Yupo. So that was kind of interesting. So that sort of led me down a path. This work here is also done on Yupo, but I put black gesso on it first, which creates this beautiful matte background. And then, using another stencil that I created, I put absorbent watercolor ground on there through the stencil, which gave me something to paint on. I painted the foliage and the daisies with watercolor. And then, to protect them, I put the stencil back on and scraped a layer of gloss medium through it again. And what I like most about this little work was the way that the foliage is glossy, and it looks very, very interesting against the dark black matte background. Which led to another experiment. I'm not showing you all the failures in between, by the way. I'm just highlighting a few that I thought were interesting. This one was done on watercolor paper. I created a stencil of these daisies. And then, using my jelly plate, I printed the background onto the paper. So all that dark blue stuff. Then I went ahead and used watercolor on the flowers. And then I put the stencil over top of it again, and again put the gloss gel through it to protect the watercolor. This painting also has that gloss matte feeling to it, which I really like. That kind of got me back into printing. And this is just a little work which uses basically 2 stencils of branches that I created, and then 2 masks of these little birds. So for quite a while, I worked with stencils and my custom-made stencils and my gel plate. This work here is actually done on canvas. It's 20 by 20, so a bit bigger than the other stuff that I was doing at the time. And the only part of this painting which is actually painted is the light blue in the background for the sky and for the water. The tree, the background mountains, the middle ground, and the foreground were all created on the gel plate using stencils and printed on tissue paper. Archival tissue paper. Little plug for the archivalness. And then I collaged that onto the canvas. So this was really going down an interesting path. Simultaneously, a keen interest in geometrics was finally getting an outlet. I really admire artists who have been able to incorporate some geometric abstraction into their representational paintings. I had attempted to go in that direction with my landscapes more than once, but with no success. Now I found that I could offset the lyrical botanical prints that I had been playing with a geometrically driven background. In a way, I was putting together my 2 favorite art styles, Art Deco and Art Nouveau. Having used the translucent material called Juror in creating stencils and masks, it seemed like the natural next step was to print on that material, utilizing both sides to add depth and visual complexity. The result is my Geoganics series of monotypes. Each one is completely unique. This series started in the fall of 2022, and there are now around 40 monotypes in this series. I have also created some monotypes which don't quite fit into the Geoganics series, but are part of what I've dubbed Other Worlds. And who knows where it's going to go from here. I feel like there are so many avenues to explore. So, enough about me. I would like to encourage you as individuals to think about the why. Why do you create? What sparks your interest? What creative ideas do you choose to explore? Because that is what makes you as an artist unique, as it is within the context of our experience, our observations, and our investigations that we exist as artists. Thank you for listening. So are there any questions or comments or? Okay, now you're scaring me. Are you all still out there?
Well, I'll just say, this is Shirley. I really love your monotypes in particular. It's something I had the opportunity to do a little bit of experimenting with, and I just love doing them. And I haven't gotten back to it, but seeing your work makes me really want to try them again. I just found them so freeing, maybe because I think it's just the way you work. Like I was still doing them by really sort of painting techniques, but you know, you're applying the paint or the ink in a different way. So I just found it very creative. Like I was doing very different things using, you know, that medium rather than just regular painting.
I really love it. You know, I did a commission around Christmas time, but other than that, I have not really painted with a brush in almost a year. So I love using brayers. I love putting paint down. It's all acrylic is what I'm using. I love putting it down and removing it in different ways, removing it with tissue through a stencil, removing it with a paper towel, or taking a fan brush, which, yeah, it's a brush, but it's not really putting paint on, and fluffing and whatever. I just found it's really interesting and kind of, mind you, for every one that kind of works out that I would maybe enter in a show, I've probably got, 4 or 10 ones that didn't, but that's part of, I think the riskiness of you spend quite a bit of time setting up this plate and then you print it and it works or it doesn't. Or maybe it sort of works, but then you print 3 or 4 more because you know you can do it closer to that original idea that you might have had in your head. But I'm really enjoying it right now. People keep asking me if I'm going to go back to landscapes, and I go, who knows? Yes, Pamela.
I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed watching the evolution of your work and your spirit of experimentation, because that's what I love to do too. And I just find it endlessly fascinating to listen to artists talk about their journey, because I view it as a journey as well, and the process. And it's so heartening to hear about having a long period of time when, for whatever reason, you weren't able to make art, which was part of my journey as well, with quite a large family and obligations and having to make money and all of those things that led me at one point to think that that was it. I just wouldn't make art again. And so to find out in the last few years, part of it being my move to Winnipeg and the wonderful arts community here, and support and encouragement from other artists that I've met here, that that's all I want to do. So anyhow, it's
Yeah.
wonderful to listen to your voice. It's very inspiring. So thank you.
I think life gets in the way sometimes,
Mm,
you know, and it might, but you know, that doesn't stop us from thinking. Like
yeah,
I find that sometimes when I'm not making art daily, which happens, I'm thinking, and it might take me a few days to run down a specific idea
mhm.
before I feel like I have a good enough handle on it that I can go and start to work on it. So, you know, oftentimes time that you don't get to create art is still not wasted time. It's time
Yeah,
you get to germinate.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Adds to their richness and the
exactly.
surprise.
Yet, how do you record your journey in terms of the development of your ideas and then decide if this train of thought is traveling in a certain direction? How do you decide when to jump off and actually do something with that particular point in the journey?
Well, I like to record things. I'm kind of an obsessively organized person. You know, I alphabetize my spice cabinet and things like that. So, mind you, I work in incredibly messy space. So I don't know where that comes from, but I like to record my ideas. So I've always kept a book where I wrote things down and wrote down my thoughts on ideas and things. And then, you know, you try to go back and read it again. And in later years, of course, I've been doing that on the computer using just a standard program called OneNote. And it allows me to have all kinds of different ways of organizing it. I can, you know, have ideas that I just sort of, here's what's happening and here's what I'm creating over a period of time. I jump to another tab at a point where I want to start recording ideas related to a certain medium or a certain subject. And so I do that. And I record a lot of that. I take photographs of my work as I'm going along. Sometimes I take photographs of works in progress, which is interesting. Looking back on it sometimes. I always record my finished works. So take photographs and record all the information about them. So when I want to go back and look at a particular idea, I can find it. And then I can read my thoughts that I originally had about it, and then I can start to develop it. And I think that's a really useful thing to do. I guess, you know, some people call it journaling. It's not art journaling. It's not like I have a journal and I create a piece of art in it every day. This is my train of consciousness. This is my ideas that I'm actually writing down. And I throw in illustrations, but it's more about it is for me. It's just for me, really. It is a place that I go to review something or to get some more inspiration.
I know that Shirley's still online here.
Yep.
Yep.
I am.
I've been following you and the development of your ideas, and you'll start this approach where you work on pan pastels, or you work on something, and you'll follow that medium and take it to its experimental, and it's really quite fascinating to watch. And do you do the similar kind of thing?
I'll follow a line of interest until I figure that I've reached a bit of a dead end. And it may be that I just don't feel it's that inspiring anymore, or it may be a technical thing, or it may be that, you know, I've just gotten distracted by something shinier. That happens too. But usually when I branch off and I decide to do something in a different media other than, say, painting on canvas, I will usually do a series of them. So the gouache and ink resist is a technique, again, highly risky. You never know whether it's going to come out or not. So I would maybe be working on 4 or 5 of those simultaneously, because you will have ones that won't work and you just, you know, get rid of them. And I find with the printmaking, it's a little bit like that too. With the monotypes, certainly not everything that you do is going to come out. So I will run down a train of thought. That last one that I showed you there, that one that I called The Other Worlds, which was sort of this tree shape coming up in front of moons and gradation between the blue, purple, and the yellow at the bottom. That's one of my most recent ones. And I've got some other ones that I'm branching off slightly from that, but I do like to kind of explore an idea to its end. I love the pan pastels. Got rid of them though. I stuck with my set of regular sticks of the
Well, you can give them to artists to incorporate them with other medias into mixed media
Yeah.
work. Yeah, they're very useful in different applications other than the intended one, I'm sure. But I think too that it's interesting when you notice that the art history background, because I too really feel that we really need to inform ourselves, because we stand on the shoulders of so many, even
Exactly. Yeah.
being unaware of it. And your example of Mondrian was that I came across a YouTube video where someone had actually taken photographs of all of those paintings that Mondrian did, some of which were commercially praised and some of which were not, but they included them as an evolution, and they did kind of a Ken Burns, a follow-on, a little flip chart of it, how he went from the strictly straight-on representational to plain tree into the completely unrecognizable, truly abstracted form.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to see that, and they took it even further into his, his dance steps. So it's the geometric, very basic lack of, I won't even say limited palette, because it's like the red, blue, and white.
Mhm, mhm.
And you actually could then understand. It's like understanding how does a 4-stroke engine work. I never understood that in my physics class until videos came on, and I said, there it is, it's straight, that's it. But some people can just extrapolate from the 2D into a different idea, and others need to have an example of it. And Mondrian had that ability to kind of, it was reductive. It was the reduction of everything, like take out everything that's non-essential, and it kind of birthed minimalism, which, some people are, I mean, as an artist, you don't want to see minimalism because they don't put enough art up, there's too much white space. But
Yeah.
it just seems to be that we need that. We need the shoulders of others in spite of the jumping off point. And keeping track of where your thoughts are is important, because then you can go back there, as Picasso could do. In every period, he could repeat himself again and again. Yeah.
I think art history is extremely important, and a lot of people find it boring, and of course you have to memorize things and stuff like that, but it's so important to see what we're doing today in the context of what's been done in the past and how it developed. Like there's always an art form like minimalism or something that you just don't kind of get, as an artist. But when you see it in the context of art history, you can see how the artists at the time arrived at that, and then where things went from then. I think it's really important. And everything that we see, everything that we learn, everything that we do is built into the next thing that we're going to create, whether we realize it or not. So the more we educate ourselves, the better. And hey, we're sitting in home in our pajamas, looking at the internet. You can educate yourself pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Do you find there's a limit though? I sometimes feel like I definitely OD on what's out there. Like I binged on online courses during the pandemic, and I'm really feeling now like, okay, you've seen a lot of great contemporary artists and taken all these courses, and I sort of feeling now I'm at the point where I should maybe shutter myself from all of those influence and maybe see what will come out now.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of people today end up making the mistake of sitting online too much.
Yeah,
not actually doing. So you go online, you take maybe a couple of classes or whatever, you get some ideas going, you Instagram those ideas, and then turn it off and go into your studio, show up and do it. because showing up, I think, is one of the most important things. And a lot of us procrastinate, and that can
Mhm.
become an issue. So, you know, when I start to feel like maybe I'm sitting looking at my tablet too much, I say to myself that, you know, show up. And I have a kind of a list of things in this note journal thing that I keep of, you know, important things to remember. And, you know, being present is one of them. But yeah, I think the internet is great for education, learning about the, you know, the past artists, classes when you can't find anything physical close by,
Mhm.
and sometimes inspiration. But it's you gotta, yeah, you definitely have to put a lid on it.
Mhm.
How much studio time do you recommend as a minimum to really make progress? I mean,
Oh, okay. If you're trying to progress in your skills, particularly, you know, if you're at the stage where you're trying to get better at specific skills, whether it's color mixing or composition or whatever it happens to be, then you need to get your education, and then you got to put time behind the brush or whatever you're using, the brayer. And it's got to be a fair amount. People who simply like they paint, but they take a lot of classes and they kind of go from one idea to the other without spending a lot of time between the classes actually painting, they're not going to advance as quickly. But you know, again, you know, life gets in the way, and so sometimes there's periods of time when you just can't get into your studio space. So I'm not going to judge somebody else for being in there too little or too much or whatever, because I know what it's like. Sometimes you just can't get in there, but get in there as often as you can. Set yourself up without distractions, and then get at it. But when you find your well is dry and you just you don't know what to paint next, or you're kind of stuck or whatever, then that's often when, you know, a class or a critique or mentorship or something can really be helpful.
mhm. So there's a seeking element to it then, the desire to move from where we are to somewhere else.
Well, and sometimes it's a seeking. You're going along, you're working, you're painting, whatever, and then you recognize that you're lacking in a certain area. You analytically look at your painting and you say, "Ooh, you know, my perspective could be better. Maybe my color mixing, maybe it's something else." You know, there's some area in your painting where it's not as good as it could be. And that's when you have to seek out those skills.
Mhm.
And, you know, some of them might be little tutorials, some of them might be more, you know, more in-depth workshops and things like that. And then seeking inspiration, absolutely.
Mhm. Quite lovely. Are there further questions? Is there anything, anywhere anyone wishes to explore?
I have a question. Kit, I know you because we've taken a few courses together, and when we took the courses, they were all about landscape and landscape techniques. And I can see that you've gone on to many things since.
And that's over a pretty short space of time.
It is. And when I was taking those courses with you, I loved landscape, and I still do. But you probably noticed my entries into the Juried show were abstract.
I did.
Yes, and they had the names that maybe sounded landscape and the colors, but they were abstract. So my question to you is that when we're on this journey and we try many things, there are always people who say, "Oh, this is nice, but when are you going to go back to how you were doing it before?" Because they love that. And because this is something that I run into. It's like, you know, people encourage me to learn more, but they always say, "And when are you going to do your old stuff again?" And I'm like, I'm not going to do my old stuff again. So how do you handle that?
Well, I am pretty stubborn about being my own person, my own individual. I have not, I was in commercial galleries in the past, but I have, I haven't done that for a number of years because I don't want to be told what to paint. I want to have that creative freedom. And so seeking a ton of sales and satisfying a customer base is not part of where I'm at. But usually people who ask those questions are friends and, stuff like that. And I just say, well, you never know. I may go back to that, but it will probably look different when I go back to it as well. But yep, I get the same question. But you're not going to stop painting landscapes, are you?
Oh, I'm doing one right now, but it is a very abstract landscape. Yeah, I love it.
Well, you see, this is it. I have avoided when I was doing my exploration. I was painting things that I don't really care about. Flowers, couldn't care less. I'm not a floral painter. Because it was a subject that I had no preconceived notions about. If I'd attempted to do landscapes using some sort of weird stencil-y thing, I think I really would have shot myself in the foot. It would have been too hard. I had to take something that was really out of my wheelhouse and say, I'm going to experiment with that. And I think it worked. I did dip back into landscapes for that one painting that I showed you of the big bare tree. But then after that, I steered away from it again. Now I'm actually starting to feel a little comfortable with the idea of incorporating some landscape elements into my monotypes. And I'm kind of experimenting with that. And I keep waffling because I keep on saying to myself, it's not a landscape, it's not a landscape. It's just, shapes and motion and what all these other sorts of things that we talk about in, the elements and principles of design and stuff like that. But there are landscapey elements that are creeping back into it. And I'm trying not to allow those to become too realistic and representational again. I'm trying to keep them quite loose and abstract. So it's going to be interesting, but I don't know where it's going to go. I have done so much in the last 8 months, and it has evolved so quickly in the last 8 months. I just am looking forward to the next 8.
Thank you.
Are there any further thoughts from the participants?
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
I'm arriving late, so I'll have to watch the recording, but I just had a quick question. Like, what are your thoughts on in regards to a piece of art? We see that color and composition and edges and brush strokes and all those different elements all are part of it. We read it, we try to improve it. What do you feel is the top 3 or the top 1 that you focus on when you either making your own painting or you're looking at paintings to jury?
Well, number 1 to me is always going to be composition. You can take very simplistic subject matter. If it's put together really well and it's designed well and presented well, it's probably going to be quite eye-catching and quite interesting. But if it's a lousy composition, you can paint it as well as you want. You can be great at color mixing and everything else. But if it's a lousy composition, it's never going to be more than sort of a mediocre painting. So that's where I usually tell people to focus their education and their progress is to focus on composition, the elements and principles of design, and try to advance your skills in that area. And it will make a huge impact on your painting. Was that a useful response?
No, that's what I agree with. I've had some good discussions over the years with people, and I'm going to stick to the composition as well. It's they're all important, and value is important, and whatever. But I think it's what turns your head or grabs your eye is that composition if it's laid out properly. So I agree. Thanks.
And remember, value and color are 2 of the main elements of design. So it's all of that's included in the principles of design and composition.
Are there any further questions? Ideas? Well, I guess we can do the wind up now. I would just like to say thank you so much, both Chris and Kit, for your insights and your guidance. You've presented so much to inspire us and to give guidance for people in every area of their journey, whether they're beginning or middle, emerging or professionally developed. There's something here for everyone to think about, to chew on, and to help guide them. And certainly they can be standing on your shoulders as they continue in the journey. I'd like to say that we love hosting these juror lectures because so many interesting ideas and inspirations are offered to the participants. And now that we have them, or will have them on YouTube, we have a much wider audience to actually make these available. The next event is our awards recognition evening, and there used to be surprises in terms of presenting them, but now we put them all up on the website so that people can enjoy them for as long as possible. And then we do the presentations and the talks around it, and that's next week, a week from this evening. You will find that link. It's already up on the website, but this time it's on the awards page. It's not a live link. You have to copy and paste it so that, and you're welcome to invite your friends. The public is welcome. And you're welcome to send the link to your colleagues as well. And we will look forward, Kit and Christine have both indicated that they will be present next week and participate in the awards presentations, as will some of the donors of the awards. And of course, I think 11 out of the 12 award recipients are going to be in the live presentation. So that's going to be very exciting as well. I'd like to say thank you to everyone for signing in and for your thoughtful questions. I hope you have a takeaway that goes and helps you in the creation of your art to do something fabulous and marvelous and takes you a little further in the journey that you want to make. And I wish you all very artful hours. So we'll see you next week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, Kit.
Goodbye, Chris.